Hi, friends. Welcome. Hi, Mark. Hi, Amy. Feel free to turn your video screens on. Hi, Dara. Hi, Lynn. Just wait a few minutes just to, probably right, 30 people registered, so we'll see how many show up. Hi, Eric. Maybe you can just let us know where you're calling in from if you just want to write in the chat. Maybe write in the chat where you're from and how you know me. I recognize some of your faces, but teach a lot. Hard to remember where and when I know some people I know. So like Lynn, I know from the morning meditations. Okay. So welcome if you're just calling. Hi, Anna. Just asking people to share in the chat where they're from and how you know me or how you got to be here on this call. So Phil from Vermont. So quite a few people have been doing the sunrise meditations. That's great. Lynn's asking if I would consider coming to a retreat, in Hollyhock. Are you calling from Hollyhock, Lynn? No, but you're up in BC somewhere. So the Natural Dharma Fellowship, Amy, is that with Lama Willa and Elizabeth? Yeah. Great.
Yeah, that's right.
Great. Right, and Anna saw us meditating in the fields. When people see us meditating in the fields, most of them think, oh, I want to be meditating out there in the trees. And okay, so Lynn, you lived in Cortez for 18 years. Yeah, I used to teach Hollyhock, and I have thought about doing it again. Cortez Island, which is up the Sunshine Coast. No, up the Sunshine Coast? Yeah. North of Vancouver, very beautiful. So, I'll just wait maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. Nice to get a sense of where people come across the work, and it's nice to know that many people have found the work through the sunrise meditation, which is, in case you don't know what that is, it's the daily meditation that I've been offering for a couple of years. I don't do it every week now because it's a lot to continue, but various Awaken the Wild graduates. Mark, I think if I remember rightly, do you often post really great nature poetry?
I do indeed do that, but it's interesting. So today's meditations, when you went muted, I ended up getting several direct messages to me like, I can't hear you anymore.
Oh, that's funny.
That's why I kind of call myself the other Mark, because people get confused.
That's funny. That's right.
So I'd go back and say, I'm the second Mark here. I'm not the Mark Coleman, but he does mute if there's heavy traffic noise or
Right.
unwanted noise. And they come back and say, oh, well, thanks for explaining that, even though you're not him.
Which there was. It was quite noisy today.
It was.
Anyhow, I really appreciate your poetry sensibility.
Thanks.
And yeah, feel free to share anyone's, because it's sometimes I would copy and paste some of your poetry snippets. They're beautiful. Yeah.
But it is interesting because it does. I mean, it's interesting for me because it does confuse people. Because somebody would come back and say, "That's a great quote, Mark," and then everybody's like, "Oh, did Mark quote? What do you say? What do you say?" Thinking it's you is what.
Right. Right. Great.
So I'm kind of living off your focus and meditation on that.
Right.
So
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, that's great. Well, friends, so thank you for taking the time. And so what I'll do is, hi, Nicholas. I will just say, I'll just give an introduction to the training and a little background, and some of which you know, but doesn't have to share it. And then I will just open it up for questions, and you can feel free to write questions in the chat. Also we can have a dialogue at the end once I've finished talking. And yeah, so this will be the 5th Wake in the Wild teacher training. Started probably about 8 years ago, maybe. And they're year-long trainings, and we meet for 4 week-long residential retreats over the course of the year. And the year is roughly 10 to 11 months, depending on the flow of when we start and end. Based on the Awake in the Wild work that I've been teaching for the last 20 years, integrating mindfulness and nature, based on my own long immersion in meditation through my Buddhist training and teacher training, and also my long love and immersion in the natural world. And, you know, at some point when I came to the States in the 90s, mid-90s, fell in love with the wilderness here, and began taking my own meditation practice outside a lot, and found it very profound and insightful and beautiful, and started doing my own retreats outside for myself in the backcountry, and just made a lot of sense to take my practice outside. And at some point when I started teaching insight meditation, I was invited to lead a retreat out in the canyons in Navajo country. And so that was 2002, I think. And so since that time, and it was such a no-brainer for me to integrate those two loves, nature and meditation, mindfulness. And so it's been a lovely journey to explore how these two interweave, how our awareness practice opens our hearts and body and mind and sensitivity to life and nature, and how nature calls forth awareness and calls forth presence and understanding and love and connection. And so as I say, I've been doing that for 20 years. And at some point, actually about 10 years ago, maybe about 10 years ago, I started leading mindfulness teacher trainings, which I do in Europe and in the US, also year-longs. And the idea for running a nature teacher training came out of that, where I was very much enjoying and appreciating that, of training people in mindfulness to share the teachings, and then it just made sense to share. I was getting a lot of people wanting to know how they could share this work with others, because they've been deeply impacted. And so I started the first teacher training back in 2014, I think. So yeah, and they're beautiful, deep immersions. I just came off training week last week. So I'm in the fourth round of that teacher training in the third retreat. And what's profound about the trainings is it's a small cohort. So I cap it at 20. This one is smaller because of the pandemic, and it's just hard for people to travel and commit. And so more like 15, and then it's dropped a little bit. And it's a profound, beautiful community that gets created, very, very connected in a way, way deeper and immersed than in my mindfulness training, partly because it's residential, smaller group, and we're really, the cohort gets deeply connected. And I say at the beginning of the training, and I don't think people believe me, but I say at the beginning of the training, you will learn as much from each other as you will learn from me. And that probably sounds like a nice platitude, like, yeah. It's, but it's actually true. And partly because, I'm the training, partly from the experience I learned from running the mindfulness teacher trainings. So it's a very experiential learning. Very mindfulness based, it's practice based, and there's a lot of practice, deepening your own practice, and there's a lot of practice teaching each other. And when we and also a lot of inquiry. And so when you do those three things together with a small group, practice teaching, inquiry, it gets very rich and very real, personal, meaningful, deep very quickly. And so bonding, connection happens, and support happens, and people come with their own wisdom and experience, and they bring that to the table. And for example, I just was chatting with them earlier. There's a woman, Kyo, who is 20 years trained as a nature educator for children. And so I love bringing her voice into when I'm teaching, because she has a lot of experience with being outdoors, outdoor ed, and being with kids, and all the creativity that's involved in teaching kids about nature. And so there's always a rich cohort with a lot of experience and diverse voices. And so how the flow of the year works is, so there's 4 week-long residential retreats over the year. And the first retreat is really mostly an immersion into the practices. So it's a mostly silent-ish retreat. And there's about 4+ days of just exploring the different Awaken the Wild practices, partly based on the book, partly also just developed from other practices I've crafted over the years. And then towards the end of that retreat, I sort of do a debriefing, behind the curtain, unpacking session of what I taught, why, when, how, and so that's the first retreat. And then the second, third, and fourth retreat are much more training retreats. And the second retreat, I'm grounding people in the sort of the mindfulness foundations of nature awareness practice. And then we start practice teaching and guiding each other from that second retreat, which in the beginning seems terrifying for many people. And it becomes very quickly a beautiful vehicle for practice and learning and experimenting and creativity and learning from each other and hearing different voices. And then the third retreat, we explore more sensory awareness practices, heart practices. And the fourth retreat, more exploring wisdom practices and insight practices that come from being outdoors. And those categories are somewhat loose. There's an intermingling, because life and practice can't fit into neat categories like that. So there's a variety of those things. And then there's, there's the teaching of meditation. There's also learning how to teach. So there's, where there's orientation around giving talks, short talks, how to introduce practices, and just looking at pedagogy and different teaching forms. But the foundation of the practice, the foundation of the course is really about deepening your own practice, deepening your own understanding of what it means to be awake in the wild, to be meditative in nature. Because I firmly believe that you can't really teach someone how to teach meditation, but you can give them the conditions where they can draw on their own practice and find their own voice in teaching from their practice. So I emphasize practice first and pedagogy second, right? The form and how you teach, right? So, some trainings you go through, you're trained how to teach a particular model. Like you go through MBSR training, you go and teach MBSR. You go through MSc, Mindful Self-Compassion, you teach a very, very, brilliantly thought out, well-researched model. That's what you're trained to teach. So on both my trainings, the emphasis on deepening your practice, deepening your understanding of mindfulness. In this context, deepening your understanding of that practice in nature. And then trusting that your teaching and wisdom and articulation comes from your own experience. And so it will look different than mine. I provide many sort of formats and meditations and structures, but you will articulate it as, of course you will, in your own idiom, your own style. There's a thing that I refer to as the 4 P's that I'm orienting people to presence, your meditative presence, the presence that grows as you do your practice, deepening your practice. And then there's pedagogy, how we teach, format, structure, etc., and protocol, like what particular form you might use. In between those week-long in-person modules, which are primarily taught by me, sometimes I have guest faculty, but primarily me, there will be monthly online tutorials where I'll be sharing other material. You will, again, as I mentioned, it's a very collegially based learning. You will have a learning pod, which will be 4 to 5 people that you'll also meet at least monthly to check in, to discuss the coursework, the readings, and significantly to practice teaching each other meditation, and towards the end of the course, practicing giving each other talks. So that becomes a great support. Your pod becomes one of the sort of your pillars of the course, you could say. And then you also have a practice buddy that you check in with more informally, just to see how your practice is going, how the course is going. And you're also assigned a mentor, and a mentor is a graduate from the program, from previous programs, and they will be helping you with coursework and giving feedback. So the coursework component's relatively light because it's an experientially based program. It's not an academic program. There's it's much lighter than if you were going to attend a university program. But there's some assignments. There's an essay between the first retreat and the second retreat. There's a assignment of you teaching, recording, and meditation that you'll share with us. And between retreat 2 and retreat 3, you'll be between retreat 3 and retreat 4, you'll be asked to teach a course, either a day course or 2 half-day programs, teaching Awake in the Wild programs, and then that will also be recorded and reviewed by your mentor. And then there's readings. You'll have 2 books per space between retreats, different nature-based awareness books, and some other books around the ecological crisis and other things related to the training. So that's sort of the frame of the retreat, some of the structure in the 4 retreats: monthly tutorials, monthly pods, individual buddy connection, your meeting with your mentor, and then during the course of the retreats, aside from teaching about mindfulness, about meditation, about the art and the science of teaching, we'll also be exploring what it means to be in the teacher role, and looking at ethics, looking at issues of inclusivity, looking at teacher-student dynamics, and working with projection and transference, and group dynamics, how to work with the group in terms of management and dealing with questions and challenges, and how to work with trauma and helping people stay regulated. There's triggering material happening. So there's a lot of different components, but what you end up leaving with is, I would say, a deep confidence in your own practice and your own understanding of what it means to be meditative, mindful in nature, and to be able to teach a body of practices that you can guide people for a class, a course, a day, a weekend, with confidence. So that's kind of most of the lay of the land. There are many other things. I'm sure you probably read some of the write-ups on the website, but I really would like to open this up for questions. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it up to you. You can write your questions in the chat. You can unmute yourself and just come on screen and have me, whatever you want to ask me. And I'm happy to flesh some of those details out. I should say a couple more things. This is the thing I most love doing in life. This is like the number one most joyful, satisfying, deeply enriching, deeply nourishing, beautiful thing that I do in my life, in my work, my teaching. And I've been teaching for 20 years, and I find it, this Awake in the Wild work and being out in nature with the contemplative awareness is my passion and my love, my care. And I, care deeply about sharing this work, and I care deeply about training others to share this work, because it's so profound when when people learn how to be really present, embodied in their senses, and awake in nature. It's beautiful, it's profound, it's healing, it's insightful, it's connecting. And of course, with the increasing ecological crisis, we need more and more people to really wake up to knowing they are of the earth and connected to the earth. And the deeper we love the earth, and I always say that my motivation for teaching the work comes from this phrase: we protect what we love. And we love when we have immediate contact, right? We rarely love in the abstract. We're sensory, sensate beings. And so this work brings people to nature with reverence, awareness, and connection. And in that deep relationship, hearts open, and I do believe that this work can really be a contribution to helping people wake up to the beauty and preciousness of the earth, and to want to help steward, protect, guide, care for. The work also, one of the dimensions of the work is that it has, I work with a lot of environmentalists, environmental activists, and leaders, and and other sectors of the population. And one of the profound things this work can do is it's profoundly nourishing. As you know from your own experience, going outside, going into a park, walking by the ocean, sitting in the forest, or wherever it is you live and love, it's profound. I can be, stressed about my desk and my work, and I go outside and I walk in the forest, in the woods for an hour, and along the beach, and I'm in a different place. And so it's a great gift. And we're losing the art of knowing how to be present because of habit and technology and speed and rushing. And so it's a great gift to give these tools to people, and nourish, So just wanted to share my the root of this is, my love of the earth and the joy that I feel, and I'm just wanting to share that. So Dara, please, your hand raised.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I'm just taking in all you're saying, and it's just heartwarming to hear your connection to all of this. I've, really enjoyed the morning meditations, and it's nice to be able to have the camera on later in the day when I'm usually just waking up in the morning. So anyhow, I just was wondering about what the week-long trips, like, just as far as what's like is there a schedule, or is it more open-ended? I've been on just one of the, like a half-day meditation retreat with you and Marin, during the pandemic at one point. And so I have that in mind as far as like how, like the rhythm of it, but just wondering about what the week-long weeks look like.
Yeah. So thanks for the question. The first week is really an immersion into the practices, and like you explored for a half day, it's like that, but it's all day, every day for 4 days. So it's a lot of sitting meditation, a lot of walking meditation, meandering, cultivating mindfulness internally, and then bringing that awareness to our senses, to beauty, to different, to seeing, hearing, moving. We do Qigong, some mindful movement practice. And so I walk people through probably about 20 different practices that will end up then going much more in depth on the training. And then on the other retreats, the training retreats, they're sort of retreat-like in a way. Like we'll get up, like we did this week, and we have a meditation and do Qigong before breakfast. And then the morning, most, from like 9 to 12:30 is going to be in session. And I generally how the rough flow of the day would go is I would introduce a theme, like working with the senses. And then I would guide a meditation around some aspect of, sensory awareness. And then we'll have a debrief about that. And I'll talk a little about some nuts and bolts about teaching that. And then we'll divide the group, and usually into triads, into groups of 3, maybe 4 or 2, usually 3. And then people will practice teaching what I've just shared. Mm-hmm. And they both practice teaching it, but they also get taught by 2 other people. And so it sort of fleshes out that practice. Then we come back, we have a debrief, questions, challenges. And that takes up a bulk of the morning. Usually there's time for me to give a little bit of a talk about something before lunch. Might be about what would that be? It could be about working with sound, and just some sort of, or working with discomfort in meditation, something like that. And in the afternoon, we have a couple of hours for lunch, 2.5 hours, and then the afternoon from 3 to 6:30 is another teaching session. I'll do a similar thing. I'll introduce a practice, I'll guide it, have a discussion. They'll get into triads, they'll guide it. And then again, there's usually at the end of the day, there's some time for inquiry. So I might have an inquiry, like, maybe the question is, maybe we're exploring the theme of embodiment, and the question might be, tell me ways that you're embodied. Tell me what gets in the way of you living with an embodied presence, something like that. So the idea of the inquiry is to make it real and personal, and inquire into you, into the theme and the practice and the application, the challenge. So that sort of flow of the schedule forms the basis for the last 3 retreats. It's not a practice every morning and afternoon, because sometimes I have a teaching, like I might want to explore ethics or inclusivity, or working with triggers, or how to speak about the ecological crisis or something like that. So there's other themes that come in. And in the evening, depending on the group, this group was very keen to have me teach in the evening, because on retreats, people used to hearing talks. So I'd give talks about, group dynamics, or working with the mind, or, navigating the heart and obstacles to love, or, something like that. So it's a very full day. It's very rich. I have a lot of material to share. So very mindful of time. It's not rushed, but I want to, make this really valuable. I want to make use of this valuable time. So does that help answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, I got a really clear idea of just what the flow of the day might look like.
Yeah, it's very full. It's very rich. I try to, at the same time, have space, both people go hiking at lunchtime, and every meal there's connection, and there's great conversations, and a lot of laughter and fun and joy, and yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. It sounds wonderful. It really does.
Yeah. Had I thought, I'm just thinking I should have brought one of the students on to sit in. They could actually give you a firsthand account. Maybe I will do another webinar. Maybe I'll invite a student to come on and have them share their experience. Yeah, thanks. Eric, did I see you waving your hand there? Please.
Yeah, a couple things. First, do you have a location for those retreats already? Like, is there one spot, or are there different locations?
Yeah, different spots. So on the Awaken the Wild site, right now I've listed 2 out of the 4. So in December being a challenging time to find a place that's warm enough and not rainy enough, as if we got rain in California anymore. But in a good year, it's raining. So that one is in this beautiful mountain desert center in Baja, just north of Cabo. And it's a very special places. These huge 50, 60-foot giant ficus and tamarind trees. It's very lush. There's lots of pools and streams. And it's very lush desert. It's wonderful, secluded retreat center, quite comfortable. And the second one is where I've just come from, and Pilot Hill, which is near Auburn, which is in the foothills and towards the Sierra. And it's a friend of mine has a beautiful 1,000-acre private forest ranch. and gorgeous. And in this time of year, it's just magical. It's just rolling green hills of grasslands and beautiful blue oak forests and wildflowers everywhere. And it's very, very magical. And then July and October, they're tentative, partly tentative because, as you know all too well, in the last few years, summer and fall in the West has been plagued with fires and smoke. And because of that, like last year, I had to move my retreat 3 times to find a suitable venue because fires and smoke. And so as we all facing different layers of the existential nature of the ecological crisis, my sort of micro existential version of that is, where do I lead retreats that are safe, and so one of those might be on the East Coast for those very reasons I've been saying. I tend to do more stuff in the Western states because it tends to be more predictable with weather and very few bugs. So, there's a place, most likely the July retreat will be in New Mexico, northern New Mexico. I've got a couple of places that I've run things before, beautiful, it's subalpine actually. It's lush, like 8,000-9,000 feet, beautiful green valleys and wildflowers, and it is the beginning of the monsoon there, so there's always that dance, but that's always sporadic now. And then October, again, I'm partly sort of seeing how this fire season goes, which is probably not going to be great. Last year was a little catastrophic and very difficult to find anywhere that wasn't affected by the smoke. And of course, that's very high concern. I want people to be safe. I want people to be healthy and not breathing in smoke. And so, much as I'd like to say these are all nailed in and they're locked in, probably one strong probability will be up on the North California coast. The coastal areas tend to be doing better with the smoke and the fires. So, and I'm all ears and eyes. One of the most challenging things about this work is finding contemplative places to do contemplative retreats in nature. That might not sound difficult, but with the various criteria I have, because we're mostly silent. These trainings aren't we're not silent, so it's not as an issue, but to be away from people, but accessible and beautiful and affordable and all of that, it's a juggle of conditions. So I'm always dancing around, and I have my few special places, and then I'm always looking for more. So if you have a favorite place, who's like, hey, why don't you come? I've got 100 acres next door to me, then we should talk.
I wish I could offer that. we have had our share with the fires. Was here in Ventura devastating for my family and for many of the people that I grew up with. Lost my childhood home, my parents' home, and
wow.
And my cousin who lives very near Auburn is trying to get off of his mountain because there's been too much fire around there. So it's a real concern for us. Well, you answered the question as well as you could have, and that gives me a good idea. It's not one spot, it's several, and that gives me an idea of what you're thinking. So, and I don't, when I read the parameters of applying and when it's all next year in 2023, when start to finish.
It starts this December 2022.
This December, okay.
Yeah, 12th to the 18th, 2022, and then March 2023, July 10th to 16th, and October 9th to 15th, 2020. Yeah.
Thank you.
And applications, it's a rolling application process. We have an early bird discount till end of May, I believe. But registration is open, and So the application process is you just go online to my site, marcom.org, or to Awaken the Wild. And there's an online registration form. And then that gets sent to my administrator, Jen, and then she'll forward it to me and I review it. And some of the criteria is I like to have people to have at least a minimum of 3 years practice minimum, and to have done at least 2 retreats, ideally one with me that's a nature retreat, but not necessarily. And, you know, I have some flexibility around those because the training is happening, you know, it's a ways away. So it gives people time to do some of the prerequisites, retreats and things. And, you know, and if, you know, happy to discuss that, you know, privately if people have questions or concerns about that.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Eric. Sorry to hear about your loss with your family. Yeah, it's really odd. Yes, anyone? Oh, Amy has a hand raised. I will add you in. Hi.
Hi. Thanks so much for this orientation. It's really great to hear it from you. And my question was about, like, with increasingly like extreme unpredictable weather and fires and whatnot, like, how do you know, if there's like a big storm when we're out camping and we're all in tents, like, how do you present the material? Is it like, you know, no bad weather, just bad gear philosophy? You know, I just wondered, like, how rustic and how, like, what's the game plan if it gets pretty intense out there?
Yeah, so thank you. It's a great question. I then this is why the challenge with the retreat centers. So I always try to book a place that has indoor outdoor. So for example, in Baja, it's pretty cushy. There's beautiful rooms available. People can camp if they want. We're outdoors all day meditating, but there's a Dharma hall there if we wanted to use it. There's an outdoor beautiful covered, I mean, it's just a like a palapa roof, and so we can sit outside but be protected from rain. But of course in Baja it doesn't rain in December. Similarly, March, in the foothills, March, again, we could have rain. And again, there's backup structures at this particular ranch that I would use that we could be in, because I do occasionally, I mean, for this retreat, for the March retreat, it is camping, but I say that there are some facilities we could use if it's really rainy. So I try to use places where there is an indoor option for that reason, because rain is, you never know. Tends to be a little more predictable out here in terms of in terms of rain cycles. Yeah. So, and my preference is using rustic retreat places. So there's an option. There's camping, but maybe there's cabins or bunk rooms or something. So and there's like this place we had, it was out, it was hot outdoor showers, which were divine. And they were pit toilets, but they were the nicest, cleanest cedar smelling outhouses I've ever been in. So I try not to make them too rustic, and my preference is we have mixed facilities if possible, just because it's your pens and paper and files, and it's if you're just doing a retreat, you can be backpacking, it's fine, you just deal with the elements. But on a training retreat, it's nice to have a little more supports around that, including charging your your laptop or whatever you might be taking notes on, or so yeah. So the facility, the place I choose ideally wonderful nature and some structures, albeit simple.
Great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I have a question.
Please.
Okay. Yeah, hi from Alaska. It's so sunny here
right.
now. Yay.
Yes.
Great.
Which part of Alaska?
I'm in Anchorage right now. We have a yurt over in the Kenai Peninsula, but I divide my time between here and Hawaii, so contrast. Yeah. I was wondering, or maybe I could tell you what I think is going to happen and you can tell me if I'm right. So I've had some other mindfulness training, like a mindfulness meditation teacher training program and a self-compassion teacher training program, mindful self-compassion teacher.
Great.
And what I want though, and I'm hoping to get from this program is like, it is different when you're practicing in nature and having to think about other people's needs, like bugs landing on them and like distractions and fears some people have. Because what I've experienced is, when I'm trying to teach something outside, people have fears of snakes and scorpions and things and all of these things. And but then also using the experience of nature itself to help people drop more deeply into their practice, like with the sunrise meditations and just these aspects of nature that are naturally mystical and awe-inspiring to help deepen practice and really learning some of those things. So I was wondering if I'm kind of correct about that and if there was anything else you'd add about other things that I could look forward to learning.
So your question's about how
I would complement some of the other things.
Yeah. So well, very much so. So, I've had a lot of people come to the nature trainings who've done mindfulness teacher trainings, MSc, and similar trainings. And in some ways that's, wonderful for me because that means those people have already had the mindfulness sort of foundational established. And then so what they're getting is how to do that outside. Right. And it's the practice in some ways, in essence is similar, not the same, but in practice outside is very different, both in terms of the stimuli, in terms of the opening of the senses, in terms of the dynamism, in terms of the aliveness, the range of the heart that opens in nature, the expansive emotions of joy and love and delight and rapture and connection and gratitude and wonder and awe and mystery, like that whole dimension of practice, which, in a typical mindfulness teacher training, it's a bit more nuts and boltsy, awareness of breath and body and sounds, feelings, thoughts, all wonderful and essential. And this is more, it's kind of like the icing, even though that's a sort of funny way of putting it, but it's like, like you've got your foundation, being aware, being present, how to train the mind, which is what mindfulness training does. And then you bring that trained mind outdoors and you have this whole panorama of experience. And one of the main things that I and I teach this from the very beginning, and there's a few principles that I think are distinguishable. One is, I was just going over this with my cohort last week. So when we go outside to a place and I guide a group and we walk into a forest from the parking lot, and the first practice I do is an arriving practice, and it's a non-doing sensory practice where I just tell people, just notice what you notice. Don't try to be mindful. Don't try to meditate. Don't try to make anything happen. Just relax. See what you notice. And after 5, 10, 15 minutes, I ask what they notice. Oh, the sounds are just so enchanting, and just, you know, I feel the wind tickling my skin. I feel the earth underneath me. I feel the sense of space and vastness. I'm noticing this 360 awareness that there's just this whole multi-sensory experience happening. I'm noticing a little anxiety because I'm deeper in the woods than I normally am, or whatever it is. And it's so the orientation is much more around open awareness, sensory awareness, receptive quality of awareness to a multi-sensory experience. And so and you know, I've trained also I've trained mostly in the Vipassana tradition, but also in the Dzogchen tradition. And so I teach quite a bit about awareness, but in particular in nature practice, I teach a lot about natural awareness and effortless practice, effortless mindfulness, because nature is naturally calling us into the present. And so it's, for many people, it's so much easier and also more joyful. Mm-hmm. So it's like taking what you've learned in your mindfulness practice and your mindfulness training, teacher training, and then adding this whole quite vast layer of experience, you know, outer experience, and how to come into relationship with that. So I think you'll find, as others have, it's a very rich expansion of what you know apply to being outdoors. So I think you'll really appreciate that.
Yeah, that was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Anna. Yeah. Great. It'd be great to share this with people in Alaska. Yeah. Or Hawaii, for that matter.
Do like serious meditation with mosquitoes.
That is true. I've used to lead retreats up there. It's both rain and mosquito meditation.
It's kind of intense. Like I find I need to actually use like a net. Otherwise,
Totally.
I remember one of my Tibetan teachers, like one time we were meditating outside, there was all these mosquitoes, and when his attendant had like put a cover on him, you know?
Right.
And then of course he just takes off his whole thing and just let the mosquitoes land. And I was like, oh man, that is like next level.
That's right. Advanced practice, right?
That's like next level. Woo! Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I showed up this last retreat with a dozen head nets for people because I knew it was going to be buggy, and it wasn't that buggy, but it's nice to have them to hand just in case. All right, thanks, Anna. Lynn.
Oh, there. So I am interested in finding a way, or if it would be a possibility, because of course I'm speaking from Canada. So I am speaking for other Canadians that I see on your sunrise meditations. It would be really helpful for not only myself, but I'm sure others, because of the cost involved, to find a way to have you come up to Canada. And I know Americans benefit from coming, and Cortes Island, particularly the retreat center known as Hollyhock, is a very popular retreat center, and it has everything pretty much what you've described, because I would classify it as rustic, and it has camping facilities as well as cabins, etc. And then it has the main lodge, which I also classify as rustic, and it's right on the ocean, and there's just amazing, beautiful forest on Cortes. It's still a little unspoiled. The only comment I might hear is it's quite a journey getting there. So you really want to go, if you're going to go through 2 ferry rides and lineups, etc. Anyway, you know, it's been such a pleasure to have the opportunity to further my practice with the online, but for me to be able to go to the Baja and go to the other retreat centers at this point, because I am retired, but I'm very interested in your course.
Yeah, well, I would be more than happy to have one of the retreats in Canada. And there's actually, I've got a Canadian currently on this training, and she lives in BC, and we've been talking a lot about different places that that are possible. So the caveat to what you're saying for me is I try to, because the cost of the retreats are on top of the fee. And so for that reason, that's why I spend a lot of time looking around, because I try to find very, very inexpensive places to do these training retreats to keep your costs down. So Hollyhock, unfortunately, is way out of that price budget.
Okay.
So I'm needing much simpler facilities. So the challenge with finding the places, and this doesn't need to concern you, but just to share, most places have a lot of facilities that as a nature-based meditation retreat, we don't use. We're outside all day. So it might have the most beautiful, yoga spa or whatever it is, like great, but actually we're in the woods. So, so we just need somewhere simple with nice nature, with some simple facilities, and not to be around other people. That's the other thing. Like Hollyhock's quite big. It's quite a thriving retreat center, and so. But I definitely got my eye on a few places in BC, and so yes, I would be, and again, the fires is one of those questions, but the July one certainly possible, and maybe October next year. So,
well, good. Well, then I'll just stay tuned in, and hopefully your student that is also from BC will be able to assist you in finding the appropriate place.
Right. Yeah. And if you hear anything, you can always let me know.
I'll definitely see that you hear about it.
Great. Thanks. Excellent. Any other questions or anything else that would be helpful for me to clarify? Amy?
I just had one more question. Do you have, after the training, since you've done like 4 or 5 of them, did you say this was the 5th one that you were doing?
The 5th one, yeah.
5th one. Are there networks created, where people who've done the trainings can continue to connect to each other, to support each other in their continuing practice?
Yeah. I have an alumni body, and and I've done alumni retreats. Everything took a bit of a hiccup during COVID. And then there's an awakenthewild.com website, which, if you've looked on, has the full list of all the graduate teachers, and there's there's growing efforts to develop the organization, possibility developing a nonprofit wing, so we can access more funding, so we can have more scholarships, especially for people of color, to do the training, but also to offer retreats for youth and disadvantaged communities. And then the website, graduates can list their programs there. And so there's that whole sort of organizational piece. And then, yes, the cohorts get very close, and my experience is they stay connected. There's an alumni program, so I teach on that program every other month, and then they meet with themselves every other month.
Great.
And that's what ebbs and flows in terms of participation. But yeah, I'd say there's a very wonderful collegial connection, and my intention is to either to have at least one alumni retreat a year, not necessarily led by me, but certainly available for people. Yeah.
Great. That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mark?
Yes.
Have you had any information come in from Tofino area?
That would be, I imagine, too desirable, therefore too expensive.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought maybe it wouldn't be. Okay.
Yeah, and that's just, I have no idea, but that, just when somewhere's a destination, then it has, it's just desirable, and desirable means usually high cost. So.
Okay, so does that mean that you might be looking for places that aren't sort of considered, tourist destination, or that are popular places?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unless someone has some private land.
Oh, well, that would be perfect.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Or someone who knows me, who knows this work, and would be happy to share their land for a week, and
I have a question about, I'm sorry, I don't know if you were still.
No, please.
Okay. Just wondering about meals through the day on the retreats. Is it a shared, I'm guessing, what's the setup with the meeting?
Yeah, they're catered. All the retreats are catered. Vegetarian, like these last 2 retreats I've had here for this cohort. We've had this amazing farm to table chef, vegan, vegetarian chef. And so there's 3 meals a day, and it's, it's an important criteria is making sure everyone's well nourished. And so, yes, so that definitely important part. Yeah. And Baja, we have these amazing local chefs. They're just both adorable and an amazing food, amazing Mexican food. So depending on the retreat, depends on, where I can source a cook or a chef from. And
And with that, it sounds like bringing in the culture of not just the land, but the people there.
Ideally, yeah. So as I mentioned, I will be having another webinar, and of course, you're always welcome to shoot Jen questions if you have more questions, particularly logistical. Jen is the administrator, and you can also forward questions on to me. And you can always catch me on the sunrise and say, "Hey, I've got a question for you." Cost and scholarships available. So the cost is, let me just go over to the website for a second. I may not be quite current with all that stuff. Scholarships are available by a person by person basis. And the cost is $6,250 US. And then each retreat, because they're individually paid for, depending on your accommodation and stuff. But generally, the retreats are around sort of $400 or $500 per retreat. So you want to add that into your calculation. And then once you go through the program and you successfully do all the coursework and the practicum, and then you graduate and become a certified Awaken the Wild teacher. And if you keep up your certification, which is some simple annual requirements, then you can continue to use the website and come to the tutorials and programs and use the banner and the logo of Awaken the Wild as part of your offerings and things like that. So become part of the teaching community. And people have gone on to do all kinds of wonderful things. From local friend of mine did the training, Jane. She she works with nonprofit leaders in the Bay Area and does day-long nature retreats. Another friend here lives in Sausalito. She utilized the Airbnb experiences and had a ton of work offering people hiking and mindful hiking and mindful practice in Marin here. And then people have integrated into whatever they're into. So Dorby up in Central Valley, she's a big rower, and so she leads rowing and mindfulness nature days. Kim Soji, who's based up in Ontario, she's a big, very outdoor. She's a cross-country skier and hiker, and so she's led snowshoeing nature days and cross-country skiing nature days, and and then there's another woman here whose name is eluding me for a moment, Nikki. She's a very accomplished surfer, and she has a surf school, and so she integrates mindfulness and nature and surfing. And people have led retreats up in the mountains in Colorado, and on and on. I can't keep track of all the things people are doing, but so depending on your interest and where you live, and maybe you're into just walking in the woods, and you integrate being in the woods and nature, or you're into backpacking, or you're interested in ritual and altars, and like I had a wonderful birder on in this cohort, and so she's integrating mindfulness in nature with the Audubon Society she works for, and people who work with kids, and so they're integrating these contemplative practices with kids, and so on it goes. So there's what's nice about the field that as you may know, mindfulness has exploded, and it's becoming quite a in the mindfulness teaching world anyway, quite a lot of teachers out there. The nature field, in my experience, is very, very new in terms of teaching and trainings, and the field is very wide open. Like there's a lot, nature, we live on this earth, and there's this endless amount of beauty and accessibility and variety and activities. And so, I lead kayaking retreats, mindfulness-based silent kayaking retreats, because I like kayaking. But this Friday I'm leading in a day of mindful hiking, where we sit and we hike, and we sit and we hike. And I love being in the redwoods, so I lead days where we're meditating in the redwoods. So wherever you are, up in BC or in Hawaii, or there's a lot of rich. I got a friend a graduate who's she's a really avid swimmer, like a long distance swimmer in Hawaii, Maui, and so she leads these mindful nature swimming practices. And so it's really, they're both creative, they're fun, they're playful, and also deep, and quite profound, and also very accessible. There's a way that nature practice is a lot less intimidating than going like to Spirit Rock, where I teach, and it's like, people often bring their spouses, like they're into meditation, but their spouse like, no, it's a bit woo, or it's a bit, whatever it is. And then they come along and say, oh, this is cool. I can be, present as I'm walking in the woods and sitting by the ocean, and, gazing at the night sky. And so it allows, it's a sort of friendlier doorway for, I think, many people, to access. All right, friends, I think that's probably enough for now. So thank you for your attention and interest. And it'd be lovely if you want to consider applying, then let us know, and I'll just send an application. And otherwise, see you on the nature trail, sunrise trail. I'm actually teaching the sunrise all this week, so feel free to drop in. And great. Good to be with you. Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.